Hello and welcome to the 35th episode of When I Was Your Age, a podcast celebrating the careers, callings, and creativity of some friends of mine. I'm your host, Roland Parker, and as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Robby Garrison, and I'm really excited to talk with him about what the trumpet means to him and what he's doing with it. Before we get started with Robby, though, a little bit of housekeeping as always. Make sure that you follow the Instagram at WIWYA pod. And thank you guys so much for the support. It means a lot to see the number growing each week and all the love there. If you are listening for the first time, consider giving us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, or YouTube if the visual game is more your speed. And if you guys have been here before, welcome back. Make yourself at home. All the links for those places can be found in the link tree in the Instagram bio. And I think that wraps it for our housekeeping. So let's go ahead and bring Robby in. Robby, how's it going with you, man? What you been up to?
It's going well. Thanks for having me. Life has been crazy. I've been living my last 5 years up here in New York City, just kind of working as a full-time musician, and it's been a really nice life up here. I've absolutely enjoyed it. So,
Nice.
yeah,
That's awesome. Do you feel like you are a New Yorker at this point?
100%. Every time I have to go away for a week for work, I always am craving the return day. I always tell people, "Oh, I love New York so much. I hate leaving whenever I'm gone. I
Mhm.
I, I just need to be in New York."
I love that. That's cool that you have that connection to the space. I've really only been to New York, like I had like a layover there like a couple times, but senior year of high school, I was in men's choir. I was trying to fulfill my fine art credit, and we went to on like the choir trip, and we got to perform at Carnegie Hall, and it's cool to have like that kind of memory in connection with New York. But you're living it like it ever since then. That's such a cool thing. But yeah, it's a what's been going on with you like in the past week?
So in the past week, I actually just finished playing with the New York Philharmonic. So I am So part of my work up here is kind of filling in wherever I'm needed, whenever they need extras or people just to substitute in the orchestra. So the New York Philharmonic is one of the places that I work at. I also work with the Metropolitan Opera and the New York City Ballet, along with a lot of other orchestras all along the East Coast. So,
Man,
but it, yeah.
that's amazing. It's such a cool thing that you get to like say that you're doing, and I'm sure to participate. But gosh, that how do you stay prepared for like some of these people to like be able to fill in like for folks like when they when they need a sub or like they're needing like uh, more trumpet players, like how do you stay prepared for that?
You've always got to be on your feet in some regard, you've got to I hate looking at my phone so much, but you have to be checking the emails, the texts, the phone calls all the time just to make sure, like, oh, am I going to be needed? So I usually have a rule where I check it like once every hour or so, where I'm not like kind of staring at the screen all the time.
Mhm.
But usually that's enough time. And there have been some instances where I've gotten a message, but I didn't see it until an hour later, and I responded to it, and they said, "Oh, thank you, but it's already been filled." So
Wow.
I've had to learn my lesson sometimes with that, but it's never been with any of the major groups. It's just been more sort of the
Sure.
smaller local groups in New York. There's hundreds of other smaller orchestras besides those three that I mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that I also kind of fill in. But yeah.
It's wild that you've gotta be on your feet to be able to pick it up like that quickly, and I imagine, like, the preparation of, like, "Hey, we're doing these pieces," like, going in and kinda getting really familiar with the work, that's gotta be such a challenge, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to there in some regard, you have to know how everything is played, like the style. You have to
Yeah.
kind of understand ahead of time. And if it's a new piece that's being written and we're premiering it, for instance, that was what I was doing with the New York Philharmonic this week, was playing two world premieres. So nobody's ever really heard this. The other one of them had been heard, but only played in Seattle and maybe one other place. And then New York was the New York premiere essentially. So I had no access to any recordings for any of these, and the group is just kind of figuring it out as we go along and seeing what the sound is like. And thankfully, one of the composers of the works was present with us so that he could work on it with us and give us his
Oh,
idea for his piece. So a lot of
that's
instances that will occur. It's really nice to be able to just continue like this nice little flow, and like I don't know, like there's a lot to it. It's really cool, but just making sure you're practiced up on every different type of style and knowing how to practice efficiently rather than like sitting in a practice room for 5 hours. Just like I always tell people, like, look, my goal is practice in 2 hours and go out for a beer. I don't want
yeah.
anything else afterwards.
Love it. That's
So
great. That's awesome. Yeah, being able to practice efficiently, that would be at least to me like a major skill, because I feel like even if you just took it and applied to like I don't know, like amateur golfing, like people just go to the driving range and they're just like hitting like a million things and they're not working on anything specific. And then they're like get out on the course and they're like, I don't know why I'm not better. I like put all this time in. Like, yeah, I can I can kind of picture that. Well, if you guys aren't already, make sure that you follow Robby on Instagram. There's a couple places that you can do that. And we've got the handles up there in the stream, and we'll have that in the description as well, where we will also make sure to add Robby's website, so you can check out all those places there. But Robby, I've got some get to know you questions. We like to ask these to everybody, get some unique perspectives in that way. So we'll get started with that if that's okay with you.
sounds great.
All right. So where are you from, and where do you currently live? We got ahead of ourselves a little bit, but let's lay it on me.
Well, I am from Vestavia Hills, Alabama, and I went to high school with Roland and middle school and all the different schools. You were you at East or West?
I
Can't
was at
remember.
East.
You were, so we also did East together. Then we
Yeah.
went through everything. So yeah, from Vestavia, and then I've lived in Dallas, Texas for 4 years, where I did my undergraduate degree at the University of North Texas, and then I've been living in New York City for the last 5 years. But I did have a 5 month stint of living in New Orleans at the
Oh wow.
beginning of 2023.
Okay, amazing. And that's I wanna say that there was involvement with the Louisiana Philharmonic there. Is that am I correct in thinking that? Okay, very cool.
There was.
We'll have to touch on that a little bit more. What do you do? Obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves on a lot of these, but I like going through the rhythm of it. So what is it that you do?
So I am a professional musician. I play trumpet for a living, and as of right now, I'm sort of in this career shift that's still in the same path. But as of right now, I am a freelance orchestral musician where I go around the country and I play with a bunch of different orchestras whenever they need somebody to fill in. And also, I have recently just won an audition for the Philadelphia Orchestra as their fourth slash utility trumpet. That job has not been officially claimed as mine yet, but I have won the audition, and there's a little process. We can talk about it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a yeah. So I'm now transitioning from full time traveling and filling in whenever need be to having my own seat in an orchestra and being able to stay in one place.
Nice.
So
Well, it's a whatever the result, congratulations on the opportunity. That's such a huge thing. I'm very excited for that, for you.
thank you.
Um, theme of the podcast for us is age, in the title there. So how old are you?
I am 27 years old.
Nice. Love that. That's you answered very, very confidently and very quickly. Whereas a lot of the people that I've seen recently, they're like, 28, like they're like doing that kind of math, that we've entered into that age where it's a little bit harder to keep track, it feels like. But it's a nice job on the assuredness there.
Well, thank you.
What what piece of media are you currently enjoying? So book, podcasts, music, TV. What have you kind of been into lately?
Oh, that's a tough question. I told myself that I would get more into reading this year,
Mhm.
and so far, I've read more books than I have since high school, which is a grand total of 1.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Um, I really have enjoyed the book. It's, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig,
Okay.
and it's really a nice story. I'm not gonna spoil it here,
For
but
sure.
I've really enjoyed the plot about, like, getting to understand that the life that we live in currently is the best situation for us personally,
Okay.
and there is no better outcome than the one that we're currently in, and I just am in love with this idea.
Nice. I love that. So the Midnight Library, by who again?
Matthew Haig, Haig.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I also have been trying to read a little bit more. I had to really like ease myself into like reading habitually by like doing a lot of audiobooks. So I've been listening to the Dune series, kind of it kind of leaning into the Dune hype. I haven't seen Dune 2 yet, and I really kind of itching to go. But yeah, that sounds good. I'll
Yeah.
have to check it out. Um, what is something you'd consider a luxurious necessity? And what I mean by that is something that's maybe integrated into your routine or work life, or something that you just really like that's maybe elevated in quality that but you wouldn't be able to give it up. You wouldn't want to concede it. Um, you know that it's like a little bit extra, but you're not gonna give it away, basically. What do you think of when I say that?
I would say that is a difficult question, actually. I've got an answer. I don't know if it necessarily follows that prompt,
Mhm.
if it's a luxurious necessity, but in some way it can be.
Sure.
So my idea is talking about the reward system that we provide for ourselves. And what I mean by that is, whenever we do something and we feel proud of it, we reward ourselves. But
Mhm.
if we are constantly rewarding ourselves all the time, then what's the point of the reward system,
Yeah.
So it's about self-control with the
Mhm.
reward system. So I think a luxurious necessity is building up to treat yourself in a manner where it's just like you can go out, like I would say instead of doing one good thing and you feel proud about it and rewarding yourself after that, do 5 good things for yourself. Do
Mhm.
like it's all about self-care. Like do that and then go treat yourself to a spa day, something very luxurious at that point. So like
Nice.
that's kind of what I do in music when it comes to practicing. Like I tell myself, okay, yeah, I had a fantastic week with the New York Philharmonic. This was like I had 5 consecutive great days of work in a row, and I felt like I deserved to reward myself. So I still haven't figured that out yet, but like with all the other work that I do, if I go through a tough time with some work, I will figure out a way to incentivize myself to earn that reward,
Nice.
and
I like that.
I will build that up over time.
Yes. Okay. That's a really interesting take, and I like it a lot because I think kind of reinforcing yourself with some of those discipline elements and like continuing that. I don't know that. Not hedonic treadmill is not really the right thing because that's less about rewards and discipline, but just like pursuing like dopamine. But like yeah, like I think that's a really interesting way of thinking about it and like figuring out what's something that I can reward myself with, be it like a spa day or like a new purchase that kind of reinforces like something for myself. I like that a lot. That's a really cool framework for that. Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you
it's
for that.
like it's of course, yeah. For me, it's like also with another thing beyond music. It's like with running. Just because I ran 5 miles does not mean that I earned a cookie necessarily, you know?
Mhm.
Like, I want to be able to run 5 miles 5 days a week and train myself to run a half marathon. And like, obviously, I would build all this, the mileage over time for that. And, like once every other week, I would just feel so good about like all the progress that's being made. So then I would reward myself with a cookie, but not necessarily give it to myself every single day.
Sure.
Like got to earn that.
Nice. Love that. That's a great answer. Do you have any bits that you're doing? So I kind of think of running jokes with yourself and it's a significant other, friends, or like just ways that you find yourself responding. I think a big one for like people our age tends to be talking in like SpongeBob quotes. Is kind of a big one that I see a lot. But I wonder what kind of comes to your mind when I ask that.
Yeah, for me, I will sometimes act like the clueless moron intentionally. Like, and I'll just randomly make stupid comments, and it's purely situational. Like, I could not recreate something right now about it, but if we were to have something happen, or something were to come up in our conversation, then I would just be like, "Oh, well, why don't he just like look, like, I don't know, like I
Why
just
don't we
I just
just
act
print
like a
more money?
clueless moron." Yeah, exactly. Like,
Nice.
I don't know.
That's I like it. Good. That's a good one there. All right. So this next question, I'm looking forward to your answer because it has a musical element to it. I ask everybody this question, and then we take all the answers and compile it into a playlist. And you can find that linked in the link tree as well if you're interested in listening to some of the answers. But if you could replace the national anthem with any song on your playlist, what would that be? And tell me a little bit about that.
Um, this is a really good question. I love this. I actually have been really loving this one song by Alexander Lewis, and it's titled March. And there's no words to it, but whenever I hear this song, I think of like do you know the TV series Suits?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it's all about lawyers and like high pressure situations and everything, but like people have to be confrontational. And so sometimes I imagine the character Harvey just walking in slowly into the Pearson Specter lit building, and just like wind is blowing on him with this music going on in the background. Like you see his hair waving, and like Donna's also there. Just like people just walking down, like they're ready for business. And I think it would make for a great national anthem of some sort, because this song kind of feels empowering a little bit.
Okay.
And America is like, "Oh."
Yeah. Nice.
I
Okay.
don't know. Like we all
All right.
know what America's
I'm
like.
gonna hold
So
my phone up to this. Do I have it right? I feel like I've got it. Nice.
that
All
is
right.
it.
Good.
That's
Well,
it.
you can find Robbie's answer and a whole bunch of other answers in that playlist. So make sure you guys go check it out. Nice. I'm excited to give it a listen, especially with all that imagery. And then last question in the get to know you section here is, how do we know each other?
So Roland and I know each other because we went to school together, and we like I definitely remember a lot more times during middle and high school than I do in Central and East. But I if I remember correctly, it was Brad Gutteridge who
Mhm.
introduced us,
Yeah.
and
Yes. I
that
think
was
that's
like
right.
second or third grade. I can't remember when, but it was somewhere around then. And I just remember like all of us would hang out all the time. It was
Mhm.
great. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we just like all of us kind of clicked as friends instantly. So
Yeah. I love
that,
that. And
that's where we know each other.
yeah, absolutely. I also remember this is something that kind of sticks out. Maybe not the first moments that we knew each other and we're hanging out, but in middle school in band, just sixth grade band. I played baritone or euphonium, if we want to be really accurate about it.
I remember
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh my gosh.
Now I did not really continue on very far in my musical career. I did not play band past. I was not in the band past seventh grade. So I did my like first 2 years, and then in eighth grade, I called it quits after that. But and then also in cross country and track as well, was
Hmm.
another kind of touch point there. So that those are some of the main ways. But it's funny to think about like some of those moments and like thinking about the instruments that I can attribute to like people that I know now, like whether or not they played in high school or like continued to play in college or anything like that. But I can still kind of think of like, oh, that was Enkid. He played literally everything. As a, or like,
Yeah,
as that like I
yeah.
can think of all of the different instruments that like were attributed to everybody. It's a cool feeling.
Yeah, and I remember like this. I thinking about cross country when you just said that. I remember this one specific race. I remember it was the last race before I got tendonitis, so I couldn't run anymore. But like, I remember you and I were just like always catching up and running past each other every single time, like keeping each other in line, and it was good motivation. I loved it. Like it was good competition. I remember. I think you won and I like it was great because I'd never run that fast, so that was my goal. But like it was really good for us to be at that
Yes.
same pace, just like always
To keep
pushing each
keep
other.
driving forward. Yeah, I like that. That's so cool. I love that. Thank you
That was
for
great.
sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've got a better understanding about of what you're about, a little bit about you, let's get more into your story. So I'd love to know how'd you first kind of get started with music, and then subsequently trumpet. So I feel like I want to put a guitar in your hands. Like when I think about like your first connection with music, do I have that right?
You have that right. Yes.
Okay, good
It
deal.
was yeah, so my my family had gifted me a guitar at the age of 4 and they didn't think anything of it. They were like, "Oh, well, you know, my sister, she's taking piano lessons, so we should give Robbie something to do." So they just decided to give me a guitar, and I remember like I strummed it and I fell in love immediately. Like I was like, "Oh, I need to I want to play this. Like I got to learn how to play it." I wasn't really capable of learning how to play music so well at that point. So my family kind of we waited a year and then I started taking lessons. I think it was like age 5 or 6 and that continued all the way until I was 11-ish or 12 years old and when or I guess 10 years old when we got to middle school. But part of me kind of staying with the guitar and falling in love with it was thanks to my father, who I remember every so my mother and my father they're separated, they're divorced, and they so every time I would go visit my father, he would always play some sort of different genre of music in the car every single day we rode together. And especially on Wednesday mornings, we would go to Chick-fil-A every single morning and he would have this new genre for me, or like he would revisit an old classic. And it was so inspiring to see somebody just know so much about music, even though he is not a musician himself. He's a lawyer. He always wanted to play guitar. He fell in
Mhm.
love, but he wanted to see me play guitar. And he was like, "Yeah, check out Wes Montgomery. Check out like like Eddie Van Halen. You know, like you got to check out everybody.
Mhm.
Like here's the Rolling Stones. Here's the Eagles. Here's this jazz guitarist. Here is Kiss. Here's Prince. Like everything that you could think of when it comes to like fame, like really good guitar." So I was just impressed by the wealth of knowledge. And as it got to middle school, I learned that we couldn't play guitar, which I was really trying to do,
Mhm.
but they were like, "No, you got to do it like a band instrument." I was like, "Ah, okay." So I wanted to do percussion because of that. Because I was like, "Okay, well, it's like I could still probably play
Yeah,
guitar
yeah.
then." Nope. No, I did really bad in the percussion uh, portion of like that trials that we had,
Mhm.
and so I was like, "Oh shoot, okay." Well, I was so bummed. So then I went over to the tuba, and I think I was like what 4 foot. 4'7". I was really short for our age at the time. I like way too short. And so I hilariously picked the tuba and ended up getting like a 9 out of 10 on it. And the guy was like, "Yeah, you'd be a natural at this." I was like, "I don't want to be." So get
This
me
is
out of
this
here.
is
So
good
I
luck.
tried. Yeah, I was like, I don't want to carry this thing around at all. So I didn't bother with it. So I just went through all the other instruments. I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just like, maybe tuba is going to be my thing. And so I go all the way around, and the trumpet is the very last thing that I play. And this guy, I don't know who he was, but I think he had some affiliation to the trumpeter Wynton Marsalis, from what I've been told. Uh, but Wynton Marsalis, he is the world's leading trumpet player in every genre that is like classical, jazz, and funk, bebop, everything that you could do. Like he is
Okay.
a multimillionaire doing this stuff. And so this guy supposedly taught Wynton for a bit, and he as I was playing, I was just thinking like, okay, so same fingering system, same valve system as the tuba, and somewhat like the French horns. It can't be that hard, right? So I just started
Mhm.
doing that because I learned it from the other people. And this guy's like, "Oh my gosh, like wow, you've really got it." I was like, "Sure, dude. I don't know, like whatever."
I
So
guess, yeah.
he, yeah. So I I collect the sheet that they give all your scores on, and I give it to Miss Bain, and she's like, "Oh, an 11 out of 10 on trumpet. Look at you. I guess we'll have to make that happen then." And I was like, "I'm sorry." Okay, I guess it's been
I guess I
decided for
will.
me. I was, I was thinking alto saxophone, like a little bit, but I didn't really care. So I was like, "Sure, why not? Let's just do the trumpet." So, so the trumpet sort of happens along, but my focus was more so like I loved playing soccer. I really wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Mhm.
I was doing competitive leagues at what's out in Liberty Park, and
Yeah.
I just loved it. I loved all the traveling. I loved all the competing. We won the state championship with my team at one point, and I was like, yeah, I've got to do this. Like I absolutely love it. And I ended up after getting that aforementioned Achilles tendonitis injury on both my legs, so I had to stop. And this was in eighth grade, and I was like, "Well, what am I supposed to do with my life now? Like, if I'm like going to be halted for a few years, this is not going to be good." So, I evaluated what else I loved in life, and I loved music, and so that all kind of factored out into me focusing more time in the trumpet. I stopped playing guitar at this time. I was just too
Mhm.
busy to do 3 different things. So, yeah, I the second I started focusing more on the trumpet, everything just kinda started working out, and I was in love with jazz. Like, I wanted to be a jazz musician. So I, I applied for school and ended up getting into University of Alabama and Southern Mississippi, but something worked out where the trumpet professor at Southern Mississippi got a job at the University of North Texas, which people will claim it's one of the top 5 jazz schools in the
Okay.
world because it was the very first institution in America to have a jazz degree. So everybody was flocking. So I was just like, wait, so that's great. I'm happy for you. So I'm just going to go to Alabama. And he says, no, 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 I want you to come with me to North Texas. I was like, oh,
Nice.
wow. So
Wow.
so music just all kind of worked out. And so yeah, like I can talk more about that later, but like I don't want to answer further beyond the question right now.
Sure,
But
sure.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like that's I mean a lot of different events occurred that just kind of helped me fall realize my love essentially for music. And that's
Yeah.
how I got into it.
That's awesome. It's great to know and see, like, how much it resonated with you, like, from an early age and, like, having that connection, with your dad too about, like, just identifying all of these, like, different genres that you're like, "Oh, wow, like, this is really cool. I love, like, these aspects of, these genres." And, like, I'm even hearing you say like, oh yeah, like I wanted so badly at this time in my life to be a jazz musician, and then like hearing like all of like the different components and all of the different pieces that came alive for you. And that, when did you first like start to feel like, oh, I've got a little bit of talent. I can play. I can hold my own here. Because it's interesting for me to hear when people in their field, like when they first kind of knew, like I think I can do this. I think I could do this for real. So like, what was there a moment like that for you?
Uh, Funny enough, that moment hit my end of my sophomore year of college. So, um, my goal in life was really I wanted to teach jazz. I wanted to be a music educator. I loved the idea. And when I was in Alabama, I had no idea that you could perform for a living.
Mhm.
I knew that the Alabama Symphony existed, but I didn't really know much about it. And I was just like, well, that's great. They do classical works, but I want to do jazz. And I was just thinking like, well, what do jazz people do? Because it's like you go on the road, you're on tour all the time. So you can't do that all your life though, right? Like you have to settle in one place. And
Yeah.
so I had a lot of realization. So I was like, that was my main focus. So when North Texas happened, I went over there and I was going for jazz, but my professor had convinced me to, at the time, so I did music education and it was just that. But I was involved in the jazz department in other ways. I did not, because I was being brought over, I didn't qualify for the jazz degree.
Okay.
So I was
Sure.
unable to do that. Um so as time went on, like I started working up a lot of classical repertoire and I was sitting here like, I mean, it's okay, it's fine. I don't know. Like I really just love playing high notes and on trumpet, like it's fun
Yeah.
just being the loud screamer on like everyone goes wild in a crowd. Like say that do you know Dave Matthews Band?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have a trumpet player, and every time I remember I went to a show when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I remember every single time the trumpet player just played high notes and just like the crowd
Just
went nuts. And I was
yeah.
just like, I was like, I have got to do that. So
Mhm.
that was my focus. That's what I love doing. I was like, oh yeah, like why not? Just like rile up an audience for fun.
Mhm.
And so, but with classical music, you don't do that. And I was just like, what's the point? Like I don't know if classical music excites people. And so at the at the end of my freshman year, like my teacher comes around. He I had two teachers, Jason Bergman and Tanya Darby. So Jason was my um, classical professor, and Tanya Darby was my jazz professor. And
Okay.
so, like, they both had a talk. And so, going into my sophomore year, they both met with me and they said, "Hey," they didn't meet together. It was on separate occasions, but
Mhm.
they said, "Hey, so we think that you should focus on classical music." And I was sitting here like, "I'm sorry, what?" And they're like, "Yeah, so my this was a quote by my jazz teacher Tanya. She said, "Look, you've got a sweet tone, and although it sounds great on the high notes, trust me, you're going to do a lot better in the classical world." And I was thinking like, I don't understand. I like this
Mhm.
is my love, this is my passion. Like why
Yeah.
can't I
Did
do
you kinda
both?
in having them steer you that way, did you kind of, like, take offense to that initially? Like, "This is not like why are you putting me in this kinda box or area? Like, it's not the thing I wanna pursue."
I mean, I was a little confused as to why they were saying this. And so what my classical professor suggested was, "Hey, why don't you enter in the concerto competition this year? And I just want you to see your potential. I want you just to go out there." And he has these three words that I will never forget. He says, "Breathe, blow, believe." And he told me that at that moment. And I was just like, huh, well, I might as well just give it a shot. So I learned some concerto that I had to prepare for this competition. This competition happened in November ish, and so we had to play the piece memorized with a piano, and we just had to see where the results took us. So after the first round was over, they eliminated a lot of people, but I had made it into the final round. And it was I remember I looked everybody up because I was like, I don't know who any of you are, because everybody was in the top band and I was
Mhm.
like sitting there in the second band in the classical band. I was in the second band for 3 years, and including my first year, but I was just goofing around the first year because I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah, I remember like everybody else was in the top band and I was sitting here in the second band, like, oh, I'm like whatever. So everybody was a DMA candidate or a master's candidate. I was the
Yep.
only undergraduate in this whole competition. And I was sitting here like, oh my God, what is happening?
Mhm.
So after the final round ended, I ended up getting first alternate overall in the whole competition. And they took 5 people. So they had 20 in that final round. So to be sixth out of 20 of not just trumpet, I was the only trumpet player, and everybody else was every other instrument. So I was just
Mhm.
sitting here like, there is no way that this just happened. Like they had to change the results somehow and like
Mhm.
try to convince me to do this. No, this was actually what happened. And that was the moment that I realized. I was like, maybe
So
they're
that's what
right.
they meant. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
was
they
like,
meant.
okay. I was like, okay. So that's when I switched to classical performance and I dropped my music education degree and my focus in jazz. I still played in the jazz bands every now and then, but it was strictly classical from there. And that's when I realized that like that's what I needed to do for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, uh, what a cool thing to have those mentors, guiding you in that way, like them seeing like all of the pieces that were going to help you be successful, and like you there's no way that you could have seen in that moment where you are now because it wasn't even on the radar to be playing classical music at all, and now you have these really cool opportunities to play in Philharmonics and like get to travel and like and you live in New York and you love being there. That's such an amazing thing, and I love that for them and for you. Wow, that's a I've got goosebumps thinking about that. Um,
Appreciate
Tell
it.
me tell me about the actual instrument, the actual trumpet or trumpets plural that you play. What is I it's something I hadn't really considered about before, but in looking at your profile, I was looking at some of the Q&As and you were listing off like the specs and stuff, and I was like guitar, it kind of made sense, like, oh yeah, there's different tones and so, but I never really thought about it with like a brass instrument. So like tell me about how many do you have and like what do you use them for and stuff like that.
So this is kind of an odd answer, and if most of my trumpets were in this room, I would pull all of them out for you. But I've got a couple, so I'll just leave it to a few. I think I have a total of 9 different
Wow.
instruments, and yeah, it's got to be 9. And so right here in this, I have a case sitting behind me for those who are not watching video, and this holds up to 4 trumpets. Right now, there's only 3, and I usually take that on the road with me
Wow.
everywhere I go. So I will most likely be carrying a B flat trumpet,
Okay.
a C trumpet, a piccolo trumpet, and a rotary valve trumpet. So I'm just gonna talk about those four.
Sure.
So when I say B flat and C, I'm talking about the keys that these instruments are pitched in.
Okay.
So if I were to play like a written C on the music staff on a treble clef, it would for the C trumpet, it would sound like a C. But for the B flat trumpet, it would sound like a concert B flat, but played as a C.
Okay.
So it's just a whole step lower for the music nerds who know what that means. The piccolo trumpet is an octave higher than the B flat trumpet. So that's what we would play some higher note solos and features and baroque music. So music 17 music written in 1750 and earlier. We would
Okay.
always play on piccolo trumpets. And then for the rotary trumpet, that's actually an instrument that I had imported from Europe to come over here, and it's essentially a different playing system. So I like to call the American trumpets, the trumpets that we all know, like the B flat and C,
Mhm.
the hot dog trumpets because you hold it like so close, like a hot dog.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the rotary valve is like a hamburger where it's a bit wider grip and
Okay.
you have like you would hold it more so like a hamburger.
Interesting. W
So
Wow.
yeah, so that's just for the instruments I have, and I'll go ahead and shout out my weird instrument. I have a Baroque trumpet itself,
Baroque
so it's
trumpet.
not yeah, so this trumpet is designed to play music of the Baroque period, but it's very interesting because so I'm sorry for those who can't see, but uh, let's say actually you know what here let's say that a B flat or a C trumpet is the length of the tip of your hand all the way to your elbow.
'Kay.
That is about the length of a normal trumpet, like give it a few more inches and that's the appropriate size. The Baroque trumpet is probably so if you extend your arm all the way out, it goes as far as said fingertips to your other shoulder. It is a very
No
long
way.
trumpet.
Oh my
It
do
wraps
you play it
around.
on a do you play it on a kickstand? No, you said it wraps around. Okay. Wow, that's
Yeah, it wraps around. So like it's I don't remember the exact measurement. I think it's like 15 uh, feet of tubing or something, and it's a lot.
that's
So
nutty.
it just looks ridiculous, and it has a tassel wrapped around it. So and us trumpet players just like to mess around with the tassel sometimes. We I don't know. So
That's a that
but
that's
you
so funny.
can yeah. So the crazy thing is in New York City, there are so many different ways to make a career in music. But for me, it's more so why not invest my time in all of the careers that I could possibly like earn
Mhm.
money in and everything. So like that's why I have the Baroque trumpet. I absolutely love Baroque trumpet. I've actually been playing it longer than classical trumpet in some regard. It's been like it's got a special place in my heart. It's actually pretty similar to jazz, which is weird to say,
Mhm.
but it's
'Kay.
all about when you're in the moment, when you're in the ensemble, and it's the feel of following the leader. And it's Baroque music has a nice little swing to it, although it's very classical and very like ballroom dance. And jazz is like a little bit more hardcore than that. I don't know, like there's a difference. So, anyways, that's just a little tangent about that.
No, that's really cool. I love the what you said too, because you pointed to the case in the back with the m m the multiple areas that you could bring, 3 or 4. You said you how many can you bring in one on one of the cases? Like, did you s how many what was the number that you said? Because now I'm, like, convincing
Or
myself 4, okay, alright. I was convincing myself of something different, but that yeah, I think it really speaks to just like all of the different ways that you have found areas to plug in like your passion for music and like that instrument specifically. I love that. That's so cool. Thank you for taking us on that journey there. I love to see that. Is there you mentioned that the Baroque trumpet kind of has a special place for you. Is there any of those that's kind of resonating with you more as of late, or like do you kind of go in waves of like what kind of draws you in?
so usually around Christmas season is when the Baroque trumpet starts to resonate with me because that's usually where more of the money comes from.
Sure.
uh, I say as a joke, but like,
Yeah.
no, I will say like, although Baroque is very special, I do wish that there was a bit more of a career to be had in the field, but
Mhm.
because there isn't, and because I don't have the time to really develop that, I've got to work on doing my modern classical repertoire, I will always answer with the modern trumpets, but more specifically the C trumpet. It's what we perform on in orchestras all the time. So
It's very cool. Well, thank you for indulging me on that. I appreciate all of that there. Yeah, I wasn't expecting 9. I was expecting probably 4. But It's
We all wish it was 4.
I love that. Um, so you've mentioned running, and I imagine that there is a cardiovascular piece, just pulmonary strength in general, that lends to your ability to play the trumpet well. But is it including running? Like, what are the things that you do outside of music that helps to sharpen your ability to play? I'd love to hear about that.
To sharpen my ability to play, definitely. So yes, definitely running. And it's it's weird to say, but going out, socializing, having a drink, it also sharpens your
Um,
ability to play a little bit. Even though like you wouldn't think that alcohol would have that effect, it's not really about the alcohol. It's really just about like getting to go out there and meeting with your colleagues, your coworkers, your friends who
mhm,
do the same thing that you love to do,
yeah.
and just like discussing with them about this stuff. And every now and then, like they will often throw you a bone in terms of they'll offer you work and like playing on Broadway and just hiring you for X, Y, and Z gigs. It's that kind of thing. So like that also, I mean, although it's not directly helping me improve my ability to play on the trumpet, it
Yeah,
is because it's giving me the experience
the
to do
experience and
that.
the
But it's not
opportunities.
a yes, but it's not about that with my colleagues and friends. Obviously, I value and love and appreciate all of them
Mhm,
for what they do and who they are, and it's very nice. It's always very fun getting to perform with them at
mhm.
any given moment. So,
Yeah, you go out
but
with them to mingle with one another and appreciate each other's company, but that other piece is just a nice bonus of being able to have those connections.
yeah, but it's like it's more so like a mutual respect thing,
Mhm.
and
I like that.
so it's great.
Nice, I love it. Well, tell me a little bit more about running, because you mentioned, when you were younger, you had the issues with the tendonitis, but now it seems like you are running pretty frequently and even looking at like a half marathon, different stuff like that. So what's your relationship with running like?
So my relationship with running has been it's always been a constant. So my stepdad is a triathletic coach, and so he's been in my life since the age of 2, and but like obviously all my memories started later on. Blah blah blah. We
Yeah,
like as I grew up more and more, he wanted me to kind of run. And obviously, like any parent would hopefully want their children to be a little bit athletic and like just make sure that they are staying healthy so that they can like live a healthy lifestyle and be happy and everything. So for me, I just kind of grew up running, and
mhm,
that's like it's what I know best. So whenever I had the injuries, it was really sad, and I noticed that like it did affect my playing a lot because I wasn't able to kind of breathe the way that I know how to breathe when I'm not running
okay,
for long periods of time. So yeah. So with with running and playing, I actually spend more time focusing on the breathing, which I know is also a huge thing with most runners. I focus more on the breathing and seeing like A, like how deep can I breathe? B, I mean, I don't do this regularly, but can I hold my breath while my heart rate is elevated and see if I can kind of decrease it and make it more comforting? It does present a little bit of a challenge every now and then, but like
yeah,
obviously I will breathe regularly when that happens and see like how well can I regulate my heartbeat? So like going back to B, but like number 3 or number 2. So number 3 is how well can I regulate my heartbeat? And this is actually very crucial if you are experiencing anxiety of any sort of like form or fashion. So
mhm,
for us, we have stage anxiety, we have performance anxiety. It's really terrifying staring out into a crowd of 5,000 people, like whenever I've performed with the Metropolitan Opera here, I am always called to actually play the way the opera works. So the orchestra plays in a pit and the
right.
production is happening on stage. But for me, I don't play in the pit. I actually play on the stage in a costume. And it's really
Oh,
funny. Like I've had to play some interesting roles, and uh So one of the roles, I had to just stand there for 20 minutes. I played as the curtain was lifting, and then I had to stand there for 15 minutes and just like it, for us, like our muscles will kind of like slightly deteriorate over like a short period of time, and we have to like figure out a way to get the blood circulating to kind of like revive those
Mhm.
muscles and like get the blood
You're
like
maintaining your
we're
embouchure.
loosening. Yes, maintaining the embouchure. We have to keep our lips loose in some regard, but we can't just be standing going like while we're on stage because you're gonna get a look from the guy standing next to you. You're like, what is he doing?
Mhm.
so, so it's kind of like a scary thing to just stand there and then just have to play again, and you're worried about being the one guy who's gonna mess up the note. And there's 6 of us total on the stage playing, and like again 5,000 people. It's really scary. So what do you have to do? You have to learn to control your heartbeat. You have to learn how to control the anxiety, and the best way by doing that is by regulating your breathing to a fashion where when you're running, seeing if you, like making it your goal to shoot for a lower heart rate
Mhm.
by your breathing, and that really helps the cardiovascular system function properly and better. So, like that's the biggest takeaway for me with running and music.
Nice. That's I love that. I love that breakdown, and thank you for the the story too. With I had never thought about kind of in the same way that you have to like re-warm yourself up and reacclimate to if athletes in um I don't know, it's in between like halftime or what have you, just instances of like being on the bench, like having to adjust to the bouts of physical work, and like being like cold like versus like warming up, like it's really valuable. That would be a really hard thing to like one be like still and like not draw attention to yourself, but then to further like just play from like a cold start almost of like yeah, that'd be terrifying. I
Exactly.
It's a good on you.
Yeah.
I,
It's
I
like oh sorry.
no, no, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it's like if we think about it, it's like how the kicker on a football team has to take the longest amount of time to warm up because he's been sitting there for the longest amount of times, but
Mhm.
he has to like go through this procedure to make sure that everything is functioning. But we don't really necessarily get to do that. Like we just have to
Yeah.
sit there and embrace it. So we have to figure out our own way. So we have to practice playing cold
Oh,
all the
wow.
time, and it's not fun. It has
Mhm.
never been fun, and I've been told, especially when you get older, it just gets worse and worse. So,
Mhm. I love that. It's
yeah,
describing this is bringing back memories of me of just like the fatigue that your mouth has, like especially like my main relationship with playing a brass instrument is in middle school, and that's like when everybody's getting braces, so you just see people like rubbing like their mouths are like, oh dude, like I'm just like aching from like holding these positions and blowing air through it, and like I also my mouth is raw from like going to going to the orthodontist and just
yeah.
like all this stuff. That's so funny. Um, well, I love that. What what do you think is in the future for you with playing? You mentioned like that at one point in time, like music education was your focus, but what do you think is in the future for you as a player or the way that you relate to the instrument?
So, uh, as mentioned before, I just won a job, or I rather, I won an audition with the Philadelphia Orchestra as their fourth utility trumpet, fourth slash. So I'm just in the section of Philadelphia if all goes well. So to explain this process, the musician life is a little bit frustrating, but we have to go by how things go. And this is actually like a good test for us. And it's mostly to see if we are a fit for the ensemble by having trial weeks. So I've been graciously awarded 2 weeks with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Thankfully enough, both of them have shows at Carnegie Hall. So I'm telling people in some way I have a little bit of home field advantage.
Nice.
Uh, it'll be nice. I haven't performed in Carnegie since 2022, but I remember how that space is, and it's a very familiar space. And I've actually, funny enough, I've auditioned for the Philadelphia Orchestra more times than I've played in Carnegie Hall. So I actually know how Philadelphia's hall sounds. I just have not performed with the orchestra yet. So
Wow.
uh, it'll be nice. So I have a total of 8 performances with them, 6 of them in their hall and 2 of them in Carnegie, 2 separate weeks. So like 4 and 4. Uh, if all goes well, if they deem me as a good fit, then I will be fully awarded the position. And
Nice.
then I have to go through tenure process and hopefully all goes well there. If I'm not awarded that, then I return back to my life here in New York City where I continue working and doing the work that I love doing here. And so I right now I am really, really hoping that Philadelphia works out. I'm excited just to even be considered for this opportunity. And
Yeah.
uh, so my first one is in 2 weeks, and I guess whenever this podcast comes out, April April 11th through the 14th are my first performances with the orchestra. So it would be really nice for those to go well. And I've been telling people, regardless of the outcome of that week, it will have been the best week of my life, given like the just I without being a musician, like it's hard to describe it. So I will just say it'll just you're with the right people. You're with
Mhm.
one of, if not the best orchestras in the world. Philadelphia is considered a top 5 orchestra in the ranks of the New York Philharmonic and the Chicago Symphony, all the orchestras that everybody is
Yeah.
more familiar with. So it will be one of the best weeks of my life, and I already know that. Like even if it's a bad week, it will still be an incredible week. So I hope to do that with performing. As for everything else, I would absolutely love to be a a music educator of some sort. Like I still love to teach. I wanted to. I just realized that maybe middle school band was not for me. I
Mhm.
just I what Miss Bain did, what Mr. Horton and Miss Palmer did at the high school, they are saints. They are like true heroes and wonderful educators, and I absolutely love everything that they have done, and they are the reason that I have gotten so far, and I hope we have a lot more educators like that in the future. However, that is unfortunately not my cup of tea. I hope to teach middle schoolers and to teach high schoolers, but rather privately. But my goal is to be teaching at a university local to whatever full-time playing position that I am going to be performing in.
Nice. Okay.
So
Love that. And love the shout out there um, to the people who helped foster the love of the instrument and the music for you there. That's a special thing. It's always kind of resonated with me, and I love that. But yeah, well, we'll be rooting for you in your time. For that, you got some fans over here this way, from when I was your age, and obviously everybody from back in Birmingham as well. So get the best of luck to you there. Um, that's all the questions that I have, but we do have a tradition of guests asking guests questions. So I have a question from Celeste, who was from episode 34. Um, and her question is, what is a myth about adulthood that you had to unlearn or was kind of disproven when you got in there? I think we kind of, as kids, we kind of romanticize what we think adults are and like everything that we assume that they know, and then we realize like, oh shoot, still so much to figure out. So was there anything that you had to kind of realize like, oh, this is gonna take some more or anything like that? I'm interested to see what kind of sticks out to you?
That is tough. Oh, that is such a great question, Celeste. Oh my gosh. Um, that's gonna stump me. I've got to say that like I don't know. While I think of this, like, do you have an answer to this? Like, what was something that you had like
So
well, if you were in this position, like,
yeah, sure, sure. So something for me was that and I think that a lot of this came to me throughout college and kind of through the end of that experience as well. And I'm still kind of grappling with it was um I guess this podcast as an example, like if I wanted to do something, like I just needed to do it, and there wasn't going to be there obviously I can find people around me that are resources and that would be advocates that I could go to. They could help me achieve that. But at the end of it, like if there was anything that I wanted to achieve or make happen, it was going to take real action on my part. I couldn't just fall into it. There wasn't going to be. I think when I was young, I had this attitude or understanding of like, oh, once I'm older, I will be wiser, but and like in some ways that's true, but not because of just time passing, but because of the action and the experiences and the people around me and all of those things that kind of lend to wisdom, the exposure of it all, not just because I like got a little bit older. You know what I mean? Like that was um
mhm,
that was it for me. Was you're gonna get smarter and wiser, but you gotta it takes work. It's not just getting older. I know that seems pretty easy to
no,
like,
no,
but
that's great. Okay, so yeah, that actually like made me think too. Um, and it's kind of like following along the whole theme of this podcast of music and everything, but it's not necessarily just music. But the myth of sometimes if you follow your dream, you can't make a living off of it, and that's just
mhm,
false.
yeah,
If you love what you do, you will find a way. There's always going to be some way to make it happen. It just depends on how far will you take it before giving up, or will you give up at all, you know?
mhm,
Um, with music, I mean, I had mentors and friends and people I trusted all the time tell me that I should just give up music and go into business, or I should just like not pursue music. I shouldn't consider it. And because they were like some people were worried about me, and some people are like, no, you just like are not good enough, X, Y, and Z. And so I I felt like over the years I really felt a need, not competitively, but finding a way to prove them wrong and
mhm,
showing them that do what you love to do. And if you want to do it for a living, then you will find some way to make it happen
yeah.
and you will make a living off of it.
Nice. I like that. That's great. Um, yeah, it's definitely a key part of what we wanted to achieve with this podcast was I saw people around me doing difficult things and like striking out in like fields that you don't think of as attainable a lot of times, especially in like your case. So I love that. Celeste, thank you for the question. That was perfect. So I got to shout you out for that. Well, Robbie, what's a question that you'd like to ask to whoever comes next after you?
If you had a chance to do it all over again, how would you like how would you drive your career? Would you keep it the same, or would you find some way to like pursue a passion of yours, for example?
Nice. That's a sorry for not talking. I'm typing it up so I don't forget. Um,
No, it's all good.
I yeah, I like that a lot. It's such a good one. because I think we can find ourselves like daydreaming about the situations sometimes. But what's powerful about thinking about like going to that place is you can be like, well, I guess I could just like do it right now. And like, it's like, if this was a turning around point, you know, for me 50 years from now, then like now I can already maybe retroactively in a weird way, like time travel in that sense. I'm talking in circles, but it's yeah, I like that a lot. It's a good way to like think about where you are currently. That's great. Well,
Yeah,
I
and
can't
it's
wait
like
to.
a question that oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You got it.
I was gonna say it's a question that actually I often ask donors of the patrons of the orchestra for the orchestras that I perform in. Whenever we visit with them afterwards, a lot of them say the same thing. Oh, I used to play this instrument and I haven't played it in 30 years, then like 40 years or 10 years, and I'm like, so if you were given the chance, would you do it again? And everybody says yes. And so,
Mhm.
and it's not just about the instrument. And I asked this question to like other people with their other passions as well. And people always wished that they could go to it. So it's more so like, I hope it's a way for like a question to help people like pursue something that if
Yeah,
they're feeling like everything is like on a day-to-day basis of being the same, like if you're not pursuing your passion, I think you should go out and try it.
yeah. I love that. That's great. Well, Robbie, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any parting thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Well, I think I just said them about the pursuing your passion essentially.
Yeah,
Like I would yeah, my parting thoughts is just like if people tell you you can't, prove them wrong.
nice. Love it. That's great. It's a well, there's your tagline, folks. So, big thank you to Robbie for coming on the show and doing that. That is going to conclude episode 35 of When I Was Your Age. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.